So here we are. This is the inside of that topper that I made that you saw in my Rocky Outcrops video a while back. And I knew I wanted something that would still stay in line with the rest of my city block tiles. So in this instance, I want to create something with a little bit more finesse going on in the stonework. Maybe an elven courtyard, just something that's a bit more refined. So this design has been created just through freehanding, using various found objects that have a circumference in the workshop. That I can just draw around to create an overall design. So all of this has just been drawn out, as you can see, with a biro. And I know I want to do something a little more unusual in the kind of open area of the stonework here. And my plan is to have 4 quadrants going around this kind of panel. They'll have a circular area in the centre. I'm not sure what I'm doing with that just yet. So for right now, I am going to finish off drawing the rest of these patterns out and then on to the next step. Okay, so I've got all of the line work drawn out for the major sort of line work. On these decorative stone pieces. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sharp knife. I'm going to sharpen it with my trusty sharpener. One of the best purchases you will make when cutting any type of foam, doesn't matter, EVA, XPS, polystyrene, whichever. This will really extend the life of your blades rather than keep putting new blades in all the time, which can be pricey depending on where you're from. So now I'm going to work my way around all of these lines, just cutting about 1 to 2 millimeters deep all the way around. So here we go. All of this sort of line work is now, it's been sliced to a 1 or 2 millimeter depth with a knife. All of this line work, and so whilst I've been doing that, I've been kind of considering the more open spaces that sit in the 4 quadrants of this courtyard. And I had an idea. In my artwork, I often use a lot of these kind of curly cues, these sort of swirls. And I thought, what if I could do the stonework to reflect that kind of design element. So each one of these, I've just basically taken a pen and just worked some swirls into the spaces. And I'm going to basically just freehand with my pyrography tool into here, just creating the stonework that sits in these quadrants. So this is your basic pyrography machine. You can use a soldering iron or any wood burning tool really. But this basically has a sort of a temperature control on the back. This is the little bit of wire that heats up. Now, to be fair, this kind of whole project, this bit here, has been inspired by the fact that I would really like to have a CNC cutter, one of those EVA CNC cutters. And so this is me kind of comparing what I could do by hand to what I see folks doing with the CNC EVA cutter. But for now, this is the way forward. And it's going to take quite a while to do this. So I've loaded up some Critical Role. Which are 4 or 5 hour episodes, and I'm going to work my way through it. Oh, important note to make before heading off into this as well. Anytime you're applying heat to EVA, you must wear a respirator because the fumes that come off EVA are not good for you. So I'm going to grab my mask now, and here we go. So, going to hit the whole thing now with the hot air gun, and this not only helps seal the surface of the EVA, because EVA is quite porous, so paint will soak into it very easily, but where I use the knife to cut those fine intricate lines, the heat actually opens those up, so you get this lovely deep groove formed in the EVA where the cut lines were. It's awesome.
On EVA foam, you get this. One side has this this sort of a coated texture, which is the side you would use if you were using it as the floor mats that it's intended to be. So the very first thing I need to do is get rid of this this texture. So it is back to the knife. Definitely gonna need a sharp blade. Not a new blade, a sharp blade. Got the blade extended out a reasonable amount because what I want to do is just slice in literally the most wafer thin sliver off the surface of this EVA. There we go. And go in and slice. Now obviously I've got all that hot melt glue there as well, which I need to get through, but that's fine. It doesn't matter if I don't get every last bit of texture off, but if the opportunity is there, I may as well slice through and take that off as well. So okay, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to cut all these sides now. So the area that I've cut around the edge here, I am just freehanding. I don't need to measure it, and just slicing out that little crack between the between these outer flagstones here, and then you'll see I've already textured this side here. I take the knife, I do a short cut, and then I pull the rest of the piece of the foam off. Short cut, pull the rest of the piece of the foam off, and just leave that as it is. And I'm going to go along and I'm going to apply that technique as well to the actual edges of the courtyard itself. So on the courtyard I want to do some low raised plinths, something that pillars can stand on. So I have cut 4 squares. I do actually have a little bit of an idea in mind here, because I have my pillars that I made a long time ago as part of my Dungeon of the Dead 3 build, which you can check out the link for that above. But all I want to do is slice off the piece of the sealed side. Again, keep this, as with all of this lot that have just been cutting off the sides of the tile. Now what I actually want is to have an inset here. So I'm going to cut even the knife out. I'm going to cut down the same sort of depth as this, so 3mm, 4mm, something like that, and flip over, and about that same distance in, just get myself a bead of line, and then cut in. There we go. I'll chop that little bit off there, and then continue around. That's it. So now I have my instep, and I want that to go in the corner of the courtyard like that. So there we go. So it's raised up, and then I can stand pillars or some other ornamentation on this to extend the visual aesthetic of the whole area. So I have been a little uncertain as what I'm doing in the centre. Whatever I do, it has to stay low because it's still got to fit inside the original city block. So this little sort of tray was what I'd actually used to get my circle in my original planning middle. But I was actually just looking at this and thinking it might be quite nice to have a set of like raised steps to a dais in the centre. That sounds very elven to me, and there could be some kind of pergola in the centre here. That would be a separate thing that would be able to stand on here. But it gives me opportunity, I think, to just have this sort of raised dais. So I'm going to take this. I'm actually going to incorporate this now into the terrain. I think I'm going to make it not fixed, because that gives me opportunity to just use that elsewhere. Okay, so that's where I'm going next.
Well, it's definitely going to need a clean, that's for sure. But basically, I just got these marks here that are just giving me the sort of cardinal points of the circle. So I've got this scrap piece of foam, and I'm just marking out the actual kind of curvature of this tray, and that will give me enough information to be able to just freehand a set of curved steps up to the top of the dais. So I'm just using again the curve of the tray to get a rough idea of what that curvature is like, before then slicing down and across into each drop of a step. And I think I first saw this technique done by Zorpazorp. It's very effective, it's very quick, and I recommend it for creating steps out of solid blocks. Now, ordinarily for the next step, I would just arbitrarily start cutting with the blade where I needed it to be, but because this is a curve, it was easier to pen that curve out first, so as I got a better idea of where to take the cut. And then again, slice in so that we get the next step down. Now, I initially had planned on these 3 steps up, but it wasn't quite enough to get to the top of the dais, so I ended up cutting an extra couple of pieces just to add some height to the steps. So I also trimmed some EVA down to thin strips that I could use as the side walls. Chop those out, and then the whole step section is glued to the side of the tray using hot melt glue. And of course there are 4 of these around the dais.
So here we go. Here's the basic concept. Some steps, to finish off this elven courtyard with. But we've got this sort of printy stuff on the top. These ridges that, although I don't mind the ridges, but there's printed stuff which I could sand off. It's just not quite where I want it to be. So I did cut a piece of card that was going to form some patterning, but then I found this this top off a tub in the kitchen. And this gives me this kind of raised lip that I actually quite like, although it doesn't work where the top of the steps are. So my plan is to put a mark where the top of the steps comes to,
and then basically slice out that section of the lid all the way around, so that there is an access point at the top of each of the stairs. A bead of hot melt glue will attach it to the top of the original tray. And then in a similar vein to what I did at the side of the steps, I've just sliced out these little blocks of EVA to block those openings that are at the side of the lip there. And then I decided I wanted to add a little extra feature to the dais, especially as this could just stand plain at the moment. So the original circle of card that I cut out for the top of the tray, I just made a slightly smaller diameter. I glued that down, and then I just cut out a couple of pieces of card which were just shaped not dissimilar to some of the patterning on the actual courtyard itself, and just attach those with a little bit of glue. To round out some detail on this flat surface here, just in case I didn't put a structure there. I always find this stage very therapeutic. A solidly good dollop of PVA a good stiff bristle brush and just start bashing the PVA into the surface of the EVA. And also the central dais structure as well. All of this just helps to seal the EVA, seal the card, give it a bit of durability. But to add to that durability, this is, after all, still old stonework. I use my go-to, which is what they call a browning plaster. So it's basically just a coarse plaster that is used in plasterboarding or plastering. It's what goes onto the wall first before a finishing plaster. It's dirt cheap. I bought a 20 odd kilogram bag of this stuff years ago and I've barely touched it, even though I've used it a mountain of times. So really good stuff, and it really gives a nice coarse, gritty texture to any stonework. It is activated by water, so a quick spritz will make sure that it cures properly. And then we are finally on to painting. Now, I have to point out, I mix all of my colours using artist acrylics. I mix and match spray cans, whatever's at hand. I tend to work in the idea of temperatures. So I have laid down a really dirty brown base colour, just using acrylic. It was burnt umber and a little bit of white just to lighten it a touch. That gave that sort of a brownish base. And then that's a warm colour. Then I want to separate that out into a cool colour. So I'm using this kind of bluey purple violet mix, basically just a mix of blue and red. Any blue and red will give you a purple, and a bit of white as well to lighten it. So any of you that have watched me for any period of time will know that I like to use colour in my stonework, whether it's natural or architectural like it is here, which is why I rarely ever start with black, and I very rarely ever use greys. So the next step after any base layers like I've just done is to intensify the temperature of that colour. So here I'm strengthening the cobblestones with a rich mix of red, a very bright red, just toned down a little with a touch of black, and then lay that across all of the cobblestones. And that really makes the contrast between the cool temperature and the warm temperature. So I also work the stairway dais in the same basic colour scheme as well. So I use basically cool colours on all of the verticals and the warmer colour on all of the flats. That was just arbitrary decision making for that. So I'd like to give a big shout out to everybody who supports me, either here on YouTube, over on Reddit as well, where I'm gaining followers, and that's good, and some nice communication, and of course on my Patreon as well. And that really is I have some big plans for Patreon this year, and right now it's still only small, my Patreon. I'm hoping to build it because I see Patreon as the way to make my YouTube channel and the artwork that I create and the terrain that I create and some of the other ideas that I've got for this year that I'm quite excited about. That's how I'm going to be able to finance doing that and step away from having to do so much commission work and my teaching and that kind of thing. So thank you so much, but please, if you can find it within you in these hard times, I admit, to just £1 a month to build that Patreon up, I would be eternally grateful, because bringing this content out to you guys is something that I really enjoy, and I really want to spend more time bringing that out to you. So yeah, if you're up for it, head on over to Patreon. The link is down in the bits below, and say hi, and yeah, and of course don't forget, just do those bits. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now, get back to the video. Cheers. Next step is an oil wash, and this was basically a very dark reddish brown kind of colour made up of red with a little black in it, and thinned down just with white spirit. That's my chosen medium to thin the oil paints down with, and just let this run through all of the cracks and crevices, just bleeding where it will. You can be quite generous with it, as it'll sort of almost sink in a little to the underlying acrylic paint when it's this thin. And then into that, whilst it's still wet, I just added some greens, which will sort of spread out through that initial colour that I laid down. So the green will actually be knocked, even though it's quite bright, it will be knocked back in its vibrancy as it sort of dries out. Oil paints tend to dry a little darker than when you put them on, so the end result won't be quite as vibrant as when it first goes on. So once that's had just a little bit of time to just set and dry a little, I then move into the dry brushing. This is back to acrylic paints and the original colours that I used. So blue purples in the cool areas and deep reds in the warm areas. But I add a little white just to lighten them a touch more, and then just go around just highlighting here and there, just where it feels natural. And then I will go on and do further highlighting if I feel I need to just pull some edges out here and there a little bit more. But again, it's the same base colour, just lightened even further with white. And I do recommend use a good white. Even if you use cheap acrylic paints for all of your colour, get yourself a good white, otherwise your highlights will just keep sinking into the underlying colours. So over here in the UK, we have a thing called car boot sales. Pile of people turn up on a field and sell off a load of crap. And I had this brilliant find, an old toy. I know this is from a known range. The name escapes me. You can let me know down in the comments. But it was the perfect pergola or centerpiece to just be able to stick on top of that dais. So give it a quick spray with the black, just to get rid of all the garish colours, and then just finish off by painting with acrylics the same colour scheme as the rest of the stonework. And what a great centerpiece. It took practically no work at all to finish this off, and it really was a great find. I was super chuffed with this, and I think it looks amazing. So there we are.